Sounds good.
Hi, Sheila. Good
Hey
to see
Ben, how
you.
you doing?
I'm well. I'm well. It's really good to see you.
Good to see you
Um,
too.
I was just looking over some of the notes that you sent me, and it looks like you have an interesting proposition about executives needing to communicate more effectively. I wondered if you could give me a little of the background. What's leading you up to this conclusion?
Well, it's interesting, Ben, because I know you say communicate effectively, and communication is a two-way street. So it's involving people, not just a
Uh,
one-way. I'm
uh-huh.
communicating with you. And what I've seen is that many times executives are doing what they think is appropriate to communicate.
Yeah.
They meet in a back room with other executives and with experts and come up with what they think the direction for the company should be. And many times that involves some kind of new technology or digital transformation. And it's so much work to come up with that solution that it's like, oh, we figured this out. This is going to save the company. And then now they go out and announce it to people whose reaction is, how does that apply to me? Are you replacing me with computers? Am I going to lose my autonomy? To have all these issues that the leaders haven't really thought about because they've been so focused on the technology. And unfortunately, at that point, at that initial conversation, that initial announcement, they lose people.
Hmm. So part of this, then, the context is coming up with technological solutions to business problems, and then having to be more effective in terms of communicating them. Is that correct?
Well, being more effective in getting people to want to implement.
Ah, okay.
So as an example, sadly, many of us are involved either as teachers or as students or as parents in the recent rollout of virtual learning, just based on the fact that people couldn't meet in schools due to the virus. I mean, that was a sudden thing.
Right.
And so these schools are just struggling what to do technologically, and they haven't taken the steps that one might otherwise take, which would be to involve the parents in the conversation, to say, well, this is what we're thinking of doing. Would that work for you? They just don't feel that they have the time, so they don't.
I suspect they don't. But so you're saying that certainly in the schools, we've all seen the impact that COVID-19 and home learning and distance learning have had on students and parents and schools. Does this extend over into the business workplace?
Exactly, Ben. So what's happening is that business leaders are looking at, wow, how can we operate more effectively in this brave new environment, whatever it's going to be? And they're trying to make decisions, they're doing research, they're looking at options. And meanwhile, a lot of employees are isolated and disengaged. Some people are just depressed. And unfortunately, having a great solution doesn't mean that that solution will be accepted. I mean, we've all heard the expression, the operation was successful, but the patient died.
Right.
So you can have a great technological solution, but if it isn't implemented properly, it doesn't work. And to follow that surgery analogy, if you have your knee replaced and you don't do the follow-up physical therapy, it's just kind of a waste.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with technology. If I provide you with some great new tools to do your work and you simply don't use them, what was the point?
Exactly.
And what's worse sometimes is you actively sabotage it. You put in, instead of appropriate information, you put in misinformation, and it actually makes the situation worse.
Interesting. So, are there particular steps or three key things that that businesses need to do in order to be more effective in communicating what they would like to accomplish?
Well, I think there's two key steps. One is understand that some of the things that you are doing are by their very nature keeping people from feeling that they are a part of it. They're making them less engaged, less empowered, less likely to accept whatever it is you do. And anything that comes across as a top-down, I know your job better than you do. We're going to design something that's going to be designed by geniuses to be implemented by idiots. Anything that has the smells or sounds or feels like that is just not going to work. Anything that feels like the technology is going to be there to spy on you or the technology is going to be there to replace you, it just doesn't work. So recognize that some of the things that you're doing are making it worse. And then the second thing is look at what you can do to make the situation better. And the main thing is to recognize that you can have the perfect technology, but if it's not accepted, if it's not adopted, if it's not fully implemented by your employees, it's a waste. And in order to get it adopted, you need to start involving people before you roll out the technology. They need to understand why you're doing it, not just how you're doing it.
Interesting. And you've seen this approach pay off with other organizations?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you one example where this company was implementing SAP on a global basis. SAP means something in German. I don't know what it means, but in English it means full employment for consultants. And they had brought in a team of consultants. They'd spent over $20 million. We're well down in the project. And it's a manufacturing company, and they had yet to involve the plants. So surprise, surprise, when the plant managers got wind of it, they didn't want it. They just didn't. And so I was called in, and literally we put the whole thing on hold for a year because we had to go back and re-involve the people who were now upset on a global basis, people all around the world, and restart the project. And once the plant managers, the manufacturing VPs took hold of it, the IT folks were so funny because they're like, oh no, it's not my project anymore, it's their project. Hello, that's the whole idea, right? And so everything from naming the project, instead of the SAP project, they came up with a name. They called it the Cheetah Project. I mean, who cares? But they wanted to be fast to market, and the cheetah is supposed to be the fastest land-based animal. So once what IT terms the end users, once the people who are really going to make this work took control of it, now it was theirs, and they were going to make it happen. And they did, very successful. And they achieved their business objectives, which was to reduce the time to market, as opposed to the IT objective, which was to successfully roll out SAP, which, who cares, right?
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is involve the business people early,
right,
and get them to understand not just what's going to happen to them, but how it's going to change their particular part of the business and how it's going to improve the business, and then getting them fully involved in the implementation. Is that pretty much it?
Absolutely. Taking ownership.
Good. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope that our viewers have picked up some key tidbits in this discussion.